There's been a lot of hype around the Detroit Lions this year, and rightfully so. They ended the 2022 season going 8-2 after a 1-6 start and probably make the playoffs without a terrible loss in Carolina last year. But in 2023, the expectations were high, and to their credit, the Lions have lived up to that so far. Dan Campbell's this beloved coach. He's the favorite for Coach of the Year for the entire season, and the Lions have developed this identity that he's been trying to implement ever since he's been there. They win in the trenches, they run the ball well, they have an effective pass game off play action, and they can stop the run on defense. Jared Goff has the 4th most passing yards in the entire NFL off of play action this year. They've found ways to score points, and lots of them. And that's not a surprise due to the talent on offense and the excess amount of dome games they've played in this year. I think most people know this by now, but Jared Goff's splits between dome games and outdoor games are pretty drastic. But why I believe this Lions team does not have a Super Bowl ceiling right now does not include Jared Goff or their offense. It's their defense, and specifically their secondary. And truthfully, they've had some bad luck. They brought over cornerback Emmanuel Moseley from the Niners on a 1-year deal, and sadly he suffered another torn ACL for the 2nd time in not even a full year. CJ Gardner-Johnson was also signed in free agency to be a versatile and outspoken piece on that defense to put them over the top. He first had an injury scare in training camp, but they dodged a bullet. But in week 2 of the regular season, he suffered a torn pec, which has sidelined him ever since. He's teased a late return for late December, so maybe Detroit gets him for the playoffs, but that's still a wait and see. Cam Sutton was also signed in free agency from the Steelers, and he was one of the more highly touted players in all of free agency last offseason. He's remained healthy, and he's been okay, but he's not really viewed as a true cornerback 1. But since the Lions bye week in week 9, their secondary has been really bad. In week 10, they allowed 323 passing yards and 4 touchdowns to Justin Herbert. In week 11, they allowed Justin Fields to throw for only 169 yards, but he did gain over 100 yards on the ground. On Thanksgiving, Jordan Love carved them up for 268 yards and 3 touchdowns, and last week at New Orleans, they allowed 249 passing yards to the combination of Derek Carr and Jameis Winston. That includes a stretch of Derek Carr going 16 for 17 with a 138 passer rating before he left with his injury. And the Saints had an all-time horrible first quarter, including a drop by Juwan Johnson that led to an interception. All in all, the defense has been allowing 28.5 points per game on average over their past 4 games since that bye week. And it's not like they faced the most elite offenses in the world in that span. The highest ranked offense in points per game out of that bunch is the Chargers, who ranked 12th, averaging 22.5 points per game. And that was the Chargers without Joshua Palmer, and we've seen how inept they've been without him lately. Once again, the injuries have been unfortunate. If they had a starting 4 in their secondary of Cam Sutton, Emmanuel Moseley, Brian Branch, and CJ Gardner-Johnson, they'd probably be a whole lot better. But given the circumstances, they need guys like Jerry Jacobs and Kirby Joseph to play bigger roles than they probably should at this point. On Pro Football Reference, Jacobs is allowing a 93 passer rating in his direction and already surrendered 5 touchdowns this year. Cam Sutton, on the other hand, has allowed a 104 passer rating in his direction, including 3 touchdowns surrendered. Even their safety Kirby Joseph has as many missed tackles as he did all of last year, but in 7 less games. The issue here is that if the Lions are serious about making a Super Bowl run, they'd have to get past either the Cowboys, the Eagles, or the 49ers, and maybe 2 of those 3 teams depending on matchups. Can they realistically get by any of those teams while playing like this in their secondary? I could even see the Packers or Vikings in the wildcard round carving them up on defense at this rate. We already saw Jordan Love do it in Detroit, and if you get Josh Dobbs on a good day, I'm sure he could too. And as for the Eagles, Niners, and Cowboys, they each rank in the top 13 in the NFL in passing yards per game. Another area this team has really struggled in on defense is in the red zone. Detroit ranks 30th in the NFL in allowing touchdowns to opponents on their red zone trips. They're allowing a touchdown on 71% of those trips. Only the Chicago Bears are worse in that area, allowing 73% of their opponents to score touchdowns once they reach the red zone. And for as good as Aiden Hutchinson is, the guy has no help on that line. Aleem McNeil just went to IR, James Houston's been on IR for most of the year, and no one else has been stepping up while Hutchinson remains double teamed. The good news, however, is that Detroit's offense is as good as anybody's. But in order to feel good about this team winning in shootouts, I'd love to see them have home field advantage throughout the playoffs. This season, the Lions average about 3 more points per game at home, and Jared Goff's passer rating is 3 points better at home. This year, the splits aren't as drastic, because as I mentioned, they've had a lot of dome games on the road as well. But in 2023, 2022, the Lions were averaging 14 more points per game on offense during home games. And as for Goff's passer rating last year in away games, it was 22 points lower than it was at home. Luckily for Detroit, they've only had 4 games outdoors thus far. And going forward, without knowing their playoff schedule, the only game they have remaining outdoors is this week at Chicago. Detroit has the second best offense in the NFL this year in terms of yards, and they're 6th best in points per game. They can win in a lot of ways offensively. Sadly, their right guard Halapolavati Vaitai is probably not returning this season, but the rest of their offensive line is in good health, assuming that Frank Ragnow is fine. They have the perfect thunder and lightning duo at the running back position. Jahmyr Gibbs, their first-round pick, is a real weapon and really has been one of the best backs in the NFL since week 7. David Montgomery, who they signed from the Bears in the offseason, has been great as well. He's been like a better Jamal Williams. I wish they had another high-end wide receiver next to Amon-Ra St. Brown, but they can probably get by with what they have. It seems like they struck gold in the early 2nd round with drafting Sam Laporta, the tight end. Laporta ranks 4th in receiving yards and tied for 1st in touchdowns among all tight ends in the NFL this year. And that's as a rookie. Picking up Donovan Peoples-Jones at the deadline was a nice little insurance move just in case they need him. And Jared Goff, as we know, has had a ton of experience in big games. He's played in 6 playoff games now and of course made a Super Bowl appearance back in the 2018 season as a member of the Rams. And Goff honestly has had a really good year. He's been a little turnover happy of late, but I would say the entire season he's been about a top 10 quarterback. If they play indoors, they can compete with anybody. But if you get Goff in San Francisco on the road or in Philadelphia, I'd probably have to pick against them. There's a ton of talent on this team, and maybe they get some of their guys on defense back in time for the playoffs, like a CJ Gardner-Johnson. And at the end of the day, the Lions are a fun team to root for. They have not won much in my lifetime. I mean, they have not gotten past the wild card round since 1991. They've only made the playoffs 3 times since 2000. So I'll be rooting for them, and hopefully they can get their secondary straightened out in time for the playoffs. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Leave a like if you did, and I'll talk to you guys next time.